What's up, everyone? Welcome to the No Man's Land. I'm Angela Ramirez. Today is October 6th, and there is a lot of stuff to talk about, you guys. Man, has there been a lot going on. I didn't post yesterday because I had some personal things that I was taking care of, and today I'm back, and a lot has gone on. So let's get into it. First and foremost, I want to talk about the walk away movement and how Black Lives Matter has actually said that it is a white supremacist movement. Um, they have even gone so far as to offer suggestions for protesters who pretty much crashed the event. Now, for those of you who don't know what walkaway is, the walkaway movement is a multiracial organization, not an organization, but it's a movement. It was founded by Brandon Straka, and basically what it does and what it promotes is the growing agreement of many people across many walks of life, including race and gender and socioeconomic background and lifestyle, including gay and trans individuals who agree that the Democrat Party has lost their common sense, that they have gone from being a place of tolerance and a place of progress to instead falling into, dare I say, 20th century rhetoric that has already been proven wrong. And if you know what I'm talking about when I say 20th century rhetoric that has been proven to be wrong, please comment below. What am I talking about? So, a lot of people are not happy with where the Democrat Party is going. They're not happy with the leadership. They're not happy with the individuals who call themselves Democrats today. And as a result, it has created a whole movement of disaffected Democrats. Now, Walk Away held an event. I want to say it was Saturday. I could be wrong. They held an event over the weekend that basically offered a number of people the opportunity to speak and explain what they thought was going on with the Democrat Party and why they were leaving. This event had people speaking from all walks of life. It included Shamika Michelle, who I really love. I really like her. You guys should go follow her on social media. Shamika Michelle. Drew Hernandez from All Lives Matter spoke. Blair White, who is a transgender woman, spoke. It was an all-encompassing event that welcomed people from all races, backgrounds, cultures. It was a very welcoming, tolerant event, talking about why people are leaving the Democrat Party. Well, it doesn't seem like Black Lives Matter DC enjoys that type of tolerance and inclusivity, because on let's see here, what day was this? I don't know exactly what day this was, but the day of the event, Black Lives Matter DC, a Twitter verified account, blue check mark, guys, they posted, quote, "If you are protesting the MAGA and white supremacists downtown in DC right now, most of them are still maskless. Keep your masks on. Pass out extras to your comrades. Record and take pics of the police, not protesters or your comrades. Blur faces before posting." Okay, but that's not the best part. They actually included an image with that tweet about protest digital security. And in this digital security guide, what did they include? Well, let's read it. Here's what it says. Encrypt your phone or leave it at home. Cops use cell site simulators called Stingrays to monitor protests. These capture phone metadata, locations, and intercept SMS messages. This is my favorite part, though. If possible, use a burner phone or leave your phone at home. Let me ask you something, you guys. Who typically uses burner phones? Is that the peaceful protester who just wants to have their voice heard? Is that the individual who's really just going to check things out and offer a different perspective? No, that's not who uses a burner phone. Who uses burner phones? Typically criminals, typically maybe drug dealers, people who are out to commit violent acts. So I have to ask, why is a law-abiding group like Black Lives Matter encouraging members to do things like blur faces of individuals, comrades, and use burner phones so that they can't be tracked? what's going on here? This is something that needs to be looked into, in my opinion. I find it very concerning that a group that is qualifying as a 501c3 organization through a fiscal sponsor and receiving nonprofit status through that fiscal sponsor, and getting all the tax benefits associated with being a nonprofit, is encouraging people following the movement to basically conceal their identity so far as to recommending burner phones. Now, I think that to give them, benefit of the doubt, I think that the idea behind this, or the recommended idea behind this, right, is that, Black people are being targeted by the police, and that Black people are being hunted down by the police, and that basically just showing up to a protest is enough to get somebody killed. Now, I don't really know about that. That seems kind of odd, considering that like Shamika Michelle and other Black Americans were speaking at this event who did not need to bring burner phones or blur the faces of their comrades. So what's this about, really? I don't know. Interesting, right? Well, let's take a look at what actually happened. The protesters showed up, and I can't tell you exactly what led to this because I don't know where the footage is, but Raw's Media collected some footage. That's enough. So we see in the video here that an individual gets taken down by police. Multiple police officers surround the area to prevent de-arrest. Now, de-arrest is something that I really would like to talk about. This came up today on my Twitter. De-arresting is something that has typically been tried by ANTIFA. It's a pretty common Antifa tactic. And what we are now seeing is that members of the Black Lives Matter movement are actually training their followers to de-arrest people. So this might be one of the reasons that they're using burner phones, is because they're actually trying these tactics of when somebody is arrested, they're teaching you now to de-arrest. This is a tweet from her name is Jaden Grayson, who is a Black Lives Matter organizer in the Seattle area. This is an individual who is involved in the Chaz Chop zone. She, her whole all of her social media profiles talk about Black Lives Matter, organizing for Black Lives Matter. Whether or not she is like a designated individual from the movement itself, that's not clear. But what is clear is that she is actively involved in organizing protests and training individuals to participate in the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, she has said that it is a decentralized organization in her own words. She has a video online about it being a decentralized organization. One of the things that I would like to bring your attention to is that, Miss Grayson, she has on her Instagram profile basically a scheduled event. This is not the only one, but I'm using it as an example. Just yesterday, she scheduled an event about de-arrest refreshers, and she encourages people to keep fighting out in PDX, Cali, New York City, etc. And she wants people to know that this is important and that we can align our methods, is what she says, if we extend our reach towards change. A lot of these Black Lives Matter organizers like to utilize fluffy terms like that, like we're going to enact change. But if you actually look at what they're doing, she's teaching people to de-arrest somebody who's being arrested by a police officer. So in other words, basically, if somebody's being arrested, here's how you go about getting them unarrested so they don't actually get booked in the facility. This is what this training is about that she has promoted on her Instagram and her Twitter account. So here's a picture of that, right? And now if we go to the next picture that I have, the next exhibit of her work this is my favorite. She says that she's accepting donations for reparations that will be sent to the Black community. Donations can be sent to her Venmo account or her Cash App. She's also offering to clean the living spaces of Black people in need so that they could basically go out and keep up the fight and not have to clean their house. Instead, this is probably one of my favorites. She says, boost this message. White people, this is for you. For the ones that do not know what to do, offer payment to your Black friends. Offer cleaning services. Show up for them while they take on this fight. So in other words, this is basically critical race theory in action. We have an individual who is pushing for reparations, who is a part of the Black Lives Matter movement in Seattle, and she's encouraging white people to offer to clean the houses of Black people so that these Black Americans can actually go out and continue to protest without having to worry about cleaning their house. She also encourages white people to send reparations to Black Americans, and specifically herself. She wants people to send her donations because, I don't know, that's what she wants. So that's pretty much critical race theory in action. Like, that's actually somebody who is promoting everything about critical race theory. The reason that I found Miss Grayson in general is because she had been threatening violence towards a Seattle journalist whose name is Katie Davis-Court. Katie is a journalist who covered the Chaz Chop. She recently, she covered an Antifa protest in Seattle. Katie Davis-Court is pretty much a respected journalist in the area. Everybody who works in news knows who she is. And pretty much this woman, Jaden Grayson, was saying, she had a tweet on her account saying that her only regret about Katie Davis-Court was that she didn't beat her while she saw her in the Chaz and Chop. So pretty much threatening violence on a journalist, in addition to giving talks on how to de-arrest people. So that is the Black Lives Matter movement of Seattle's leader. Right? Okay. So going on to our next story, the next thing that we have is Project Veritas. If you guys follow my work, you know that recently they came out with a video that offered pretty much alleged proof, but until it's tried in court, it's an allegation. They had a video that was captured, pretty much creating an expose showing that Ilhan Omar supporters were basically exchanging cash for ballots. Like, it's a voter harvesting kind of scheme. One of the individuals had like multiple ballots, which he said was 300, which possibly could have been less, but definitely more than the allowable 3 ballots in his vehicle. There was another segment of that video that showed that this individual was exchanging cash for ballots, which is definitely not legal. Anyway, there had been implications basically that this person was conducting a ballot harvesting scheme on behalf of Ilhan Omar, or in order to benefit her. Also, the allegations included one of those individuals involved in that scheme saying that they still had to pay Al-Shabaab, which is actually a branch of Al-Qaeda. Now, today, the individual that was featured in that video said, no, I actually didn't do anything like that. I was paid by Project Veritas to make those statements. And basically, Fox News took it and ran with it. It sounds like Project Veritas has come back with a rebuttal and said that they are going to sue Fox News for pretty much taking those statements out of context and for, defamation. So James O'Keefe, who's like the Project Veritas founder, I think he's the founder, but he came forward and said basically that he's going to take Fox News to court and that he stands by his reporting, that it is true investigative journalism, and that he does not believe that there was anything really inaccurate about his story that was ran. He has a full, report on it here. This is actually not it, but he came out with like a 9-minute video after the allegations from Fox were brought over. So, we'll see what happens. It sounds like Project Veritas is willing to go to court and stand by their work, which is, that gives me a lot of confidence when somebody says, I'm willing to go to court and stand up for what I reported. That tells me that they probably have a pretty good case there. Fox News, as much as I enjoy Tucker Carlson, Fox News, we know, is not reporting on everything that could be reported on. They kind of are like the mainstream media news, but on the right. There's just not all the not everything that's accurate is getting out, even on Fox. So there's that. There's kind of a back and forth drama there with people saying, well, Project Veritas came out with this video and here's all the allegations, and then one of those individuals says, no, I was just saying that because they paid me. And now Project Veritas has come back and said, well, you know what, we're going to take it to court and we will stand by our reporting. So that's kind of where things are with that story right now. Moving forward, and something that I find very interesting is that the governor of Puerto Rico recently, Wanda Vasquez, she has pretty much come forward and said that she will be endorsing President Trump. She is standing by President Donald Trump, and that's who her formal endorsement goes to. It's very interesting because a lot of people typically think that Hispanic communities are going to vote Democrat, but I think that's wrong. A lot of Hispanic communities are actually pretty conservative, at least in lifestyle and values. So for Wanda Vasquez to come out and say that
Senadora Wanda Vázquez se
publicly
encuentra de visita
supporting,
en Nueva York, donde
oh, sorry,
solicitó a los
Windows playing. For Wanda Vasquez to come forward and say that she is publicly supporting President Trump, Telemundo reports, that is pretty huge for President Trump and the Hispanic community, right? She has, Puerto Rico is like largely Hispanic. Everybody, it's a Spanish-speaking community. Obviously, it's territory of the U.S., but it does. I think it will make a difference in the election. Now, something else I think is very interesting is I just got word of this right before coming on, and I think I might leave you guys with this. Is that the Portland mayoral candidate is actually an open communist, and not only is she an open freaking communist, but she actually has a skirt with Mao Zedong on it. Like, holy crap! I don't know if you can be any more historically ignorant than to wear a skirt with Mao Zedong on it. Okay, so for those of you guys who don't know who Mao was the he was the chairman of China, and he basically kind of started the Communist Party of China. He was responsible for the deaths of anywhere from 45 million to 65 million people. Now, Jordan Peterson says that when you're counting in the millions of people killed by a regime, the difference between 45 million and 65 million, you kind of made your point. That's kind of what Jordan Peterson says, and I totally agree with that. Mao Zedong was a brutal dictator. A lot of the people in his regime starved to death. And a lot of that starvation was caused by saying, well, the farmers aren't producing enough. And so what we're going to do is we're going to allow the old people in these societies to basically just starve because they don't offer any value to the community, right? Man, Mao Zedong was brutal. There's a lot of reports from even Chinese records themselves that say that Mao buried kids like alive. There's state-sanctioned violence. Mao Zedong was actually responsible for the Great Leap Forward and the concept of a power struggle, which is what we're seeing today when you see these people who demand somebody raise their fist and they're like, raise the fist, raise the fist. Like, that is an example of a power struggle. And that was kind of originated from Mao Zedong's regime. So, it's hard to believe that here in America we have an openly communist candidate who wears the skirt of Mao Zedong. You can see here we have pictures of other communist dictators. I think that's Lenin right there. It's kind of hard to make out everybody who's on the skirt, but definitely first and foremost, there is Mao Zedong right there on her skirt. Andy No reports that she is openly communist, that the campaign manager has been known to be anti-fascist, an ANTIFA member. It's very concerning to see somebody running for mayoral candidate that is an open communist. And not just that, she's actually polling ahead of Mayor Ted Wheeler by double digits. What is going on in Portland that is allowing this kind of communist rhetoric to fester and grow? I don't know. But the fact that we have a candidate who's a mayor, like running for mayor of a city, who's an open communist, who promotes Mao Zedong, and by the way, I just want to add this: the CCP today, the Communist Party today of China, like love Mao Zedong. President Xi, he loves Mao Zedong, references him regularly. Very concerning to see a government candidate openly welcoming the idea of Chinese communism here in the U.S. Very concerning. Okay, so that's that. Let's see what we have next here. Oh yeah, Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is, for those of you who don't know, she is a veteran, she is a congresswoman, and she is a former presidential candidate who ran on the Democratic ticket. In my opinion, I think if Tulsi were to run on the Republican ticket, she would win in a heartbeat. That's just my 2 cents. But anyway, Tulsi Gabbard recently came out with a bill to request of legislators in Congress to basically drop charges against Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, who is the founder of WikiLeaks, based on the real problems that are related with the Espionage Act. And I'm going to play this video in which she speaks about it. I think it's pretty important to talk about because what the Espionage Act does is pretty much prevent people from coming out and speaking out against the government's like wrongdoings if it is like a security issue. If it's like a national security issue and you want to be a whistleblower on something the government is doing against its own
Every
people,
single one.
it causes some serious issues. You can actually be tried for it without, well, you don't even have to be tried. You can be convicted without trial, which is why Edward Snowden ran pretty much to Russia after leaking the NSA story. He took refuge in Russia, which is like, I hate to say it, but when you have somebody who exposes government affairs here in the US and they're not safe to stay in the US and whistleblow and feel the need to find refuge in Russia, that's an issue, right? Like, why is it that we can't take care of our whistleblowers? We need to know that our whistleblowers can come out and say, this is what's going on behind the government veil, and it's wrong, and we want the American people to know about it, and then not be able to reveal that to the American people. That creates a culture of secrecy that the U.S. should be concerned about. People in the U.S. should be very concerned about that. And so basically Tulsi Gabbard has come out with a bill to acknowledge that. So I'm going to let Tulsi speak for herself here. I'm going to play the video.
Every single one of us as Americans are guaranteed basic fundamental rights and freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution. But we cannot take these freedoms for granted. I've introduced legislation to stand up for and to protect brave whistleblowers who've come forward to expose illegal actions within our own government or egregious abuses of power, and to reform the Espionage Act to make sure that if a whistleblower is prosecuted under the Espionage Act, that they will have their fair day in court, something that is currently not allowable under the law as it stands today. So first, I introduced HRES 1162 with my colleague, Congressman Matt Gaetz, that very simply calls on our government to drop all charges against Edward Snowden for the actions that he took in the public interest to expose a mass government surveillance program on all Americans that violates our privacy and civil liberties and that courts deemed illegal more than once. I also introduced HRES 1175 with my colleague, Congressman Tom Massey, which calls for the same action, for the government to drop all charges against Julian Assange, who also acted in the public interest as he published information to expose lies and egregious abuses of power in our own government. Last but not least, I introduced a bill, HR 8452, to reform the Espionage Act. Daniel Ellsberg was the first person prosecuted under the 1917 Espionage Act for his act of bravery in releasing the Pentagon Papers to the Washington Post to publish classified documents that exposed the lies that were being told to the American people about what was really happening in the Vietnam War. Now, Snowden, Assange, and others are being prosecuted under this same Espionage Act. But as Daniel Ellsberg knows well, under current law, none of them are allowed to speak to the intent of their actions in court. My bill changes that. I'm urging my colleagues in Congress to stand up for the American people, to stand up for our freedoms, and pass this critical legislation now.
All right, so there's Tulsi Gabbard. Man, you guys, I really like Tulsi. I think that she is what the Democrat Party should be and what it was when I was growing up. Like, when I remember being really young, like, the Democrat Party was a party of tolerance. It was a party of, common sense. It was a party of inclusivity. And the Republican Party was really more of like the business party. At least that's what I remember. And somewhere along the lines, things just switched. Now today, the Republican Party is more tolerant than the Democrat Party, and the Democrat Party has just lost their way. It seems like they are pushing for. It just seems like the Democrat Party has become a power play. Like, it's all about power. It's all about bending the rules to obtain power. And I'm just not a fan of that kind of politics. I think that politics is for the people. I think that it is a way for the people to control the direction of a country without breaking out into civil war every 5 years when there's a dispute over the way the country should be ran. And now that we're seeing the Democrat Party push for basically power play after power play, and disregarding common sense governorship, I guess is the best word, of different cities and towns and states. Like, for example, California, which is essentially a one-party state. I mean, Republicans have no real representation in the state of California. I mean, look what's happening there. Everything is shut down right now. Homelessness is running rampant. Drug slums are popping up. Tuberculosis and middle-aged diseases are showing up in homeless communities. And at the same time, LA is not taking care of it. San Francisco is not taking care of it. You guys should really go check out the Daily Tenderloin podcast with Dee Dee LaFrac. She covers what's going on in San Francisco. She lives in the Tenderloin district, which has now become essentially a drug slum. And man, she has some good content. She really shows you guys what's going on the streets of the Tenderloin district in San Francisco. Really, really good podcast. I definitely recommend looking at it on Spotify. But, these states that have overwhelming Democrat representation have become so partisan and so misguided that they are mismanaging their districts, their states, their cities. And now we see things like Portland, which is a Democrat state run by a Democrat mayor. Now we see them sliding into communism, thinking that that might be the solution to their problems. And boy, oh boy, is America historically ignorant when it comes to 20th century politics. Because if Americans understood what happened under the rule of communism, it would be people would understand that it is just as appalling and just as egregious as what happened under Nazi Germany. And I don't say that to make light of what happened in Nazi Germany. It is just a fact that if you study communism, 20th century communism, it is disgusting, is absolutely disgusting, in the same way that what happened in Germany was disgusting. They're both authoritarian regimes that have no good for the public. It is just, none of it is good. It's human rights violation after human rights violation in the name of progress. There's no difference between what happened in, Mao's regime. There's a difference. Of course, there's a difference, because each in their own respect had their own individual horrors. But that said, at the end of the day, huge numbers of people were killed in the name of improving the society, and it's just unacceptable. It really is. Both Nazism and communism are unacceptable, and it's a shame that people are not more educated in the 20th century politics and what happened during the 20th century, to the point where people are now actively pushing for, candidates who are open socialists, candidates who are open communists. Totally unacceptable. Now I think that I'm going to call it there. I don't think that there's anything else that I wanted to cover. yeah, I think that's it for today, you guys. If you have any questions, I'm always here. You can leave them in the comment section. I do respond to comments on YouTube. If you guys like my work, you can find me on Twitter at CO Angela Ramirez. I cover a lot of stuff on Twitter, and it's mostly just to kind of keep tabs on what's going on. If you want breaking news from me, definitely follow me on Twitter, CO Angela Ramirez. I do a daily podcast here on YouTube and BitChute. If you enjoy my content, you can donate, buy me a coffee, or you can just share it, share my video, tell people about the No Man's Land. I do have a website. It's thenomanzone.com. And there I publish all of my written work. So I do like written investigative journalism where I look into socialist movements and Marxist influence in American politics. And all of my written work goes there. I try to incorporate some of my investigative journalism into videos, but because I feel that there is a lot of merit to having things written, I do publish my written work on the site. And I don't really cover daily news on the site. Really, it's just my investigative work. So, with that said, I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up or subscribe. I will see you guys tomorrow and have a good day, everyone. Bye.